Okay, thank you for being with us tonight. And we have, that was my cue to have my good picture up. And so we appreciate you being with us. Ian and I are going to do some tent talk tonight. Ian Young, some of you probably don't remember. You have any idea how long ago it was when you did that show?
The very first one?
Yeah.
I want to say, I'm horribly inaccurate usually with these types of things. I want to say about 2 years, though.
You've been here how long?
I want to say about 2 years. Could have been longer, but I do want to say about 2 years.
Wow. I just don't have a reference. When did we actually ran across Ian in San Antonio, Texas, having already been YouTube. He was introduced by YouTube, as far as I know, and then we began to talk, as we often do. Individuals get in touch with us. Somebody who came out of the Southern Baptist Church actually texted me for the first time today. And if you're watching the show, I'm giving you a shout out. I'm not telling your name. I did see the text, but I was extremely immersed. Just today it was big time as far as phone calls and whatnot. And so San Antonio, any idea when you moved to San Antonio?
San Antonio, like I said, I'm really bad with years.
Yeah.
But when I moved to San Antonio, I'm thinking we're closing in pretty near about 4 years or so when I first moved there. So worked there for about a year, and then before I knew it, I was up here in Virginia.
Okay, that kind of gives you a record. Los Angeles, California, what's the real town?
That's Redondo Beach.
Redondo Beach. Yeah. And so we went out to Redondo Beach and picked up your mother.
That's right.
And moved her into Martinsville. And so Ian now works in Danville. Charles did a buzz where he put you on, and we actually talked about your past.
Yeah.
And so now we're basically checking in with Ian again. And Ian is... he had one word connected with him when he came here, and now it's basically Ian is the convert, and he is, let me show my slide there. This is basically what we're generally hoping to see. 1 Timothy 4:15, meditate upon these things, give thyself wholly to them, that thy profiting may appear to all. And Ian can tell us if he's been giving himself wholly to the Scriptures, but we actually don't have to ask that question because his profiting is certainly appearing, and we're appreciating the work that he does. He works with us very closely and has a good job in Danville. I don't know, do you care?
No, I'm open book.
He works for the city of Danville, and great relationship. It creates an opportunity for us to have a better relationship with the city of Danville, and Ian is a good representative. And so what I'm wanting people to get a hold to, Ian, is you've been to a tent before you actually moved here, did you not?
That's right.
You drove in from San Antonio and came to a tent. So you came to a tent as a visitor, and now you're at tents as basically the host, and you're welcoming other people in. Can you remember the difference between coming as a visitor?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay.
So coming as a visitor, it was like I wanted to find ways to be plugged in, but everybody that was already established up here, members of the congregations that were involved, they were basically making the opportunities to be plugged in. So now on the other end of it, it's like folks are coming here, and we're the ones that are helping to provide the opportunities for them to engage and get experience and figure out exactly where their best niche is as far as making the whole machine work and getting out into the community. So it was definitely a, can you say, other side of the curtain kind of experience. And it's, as far as what you learn and take away from it, it's a whole other animal.
So were you knocking doors before you came?
Yep.
Okay, you already were. Okay,
yep.
Great. And so then you come in and you basically see us doing what we claim to do.
That's right.
And you get on the ground and you get, basically, I'm going to use that word again, you're immersed in it. And we were at Danville Tire and Battery, which is on the north side of Danville that time when you came. And so we're on the North Carolina line. I don't have our picture of the tent without a picture, I don't think. Maybe the first one. This is where we were situated on the North Carolina line, the Virginia line, and Lucky's was right behind us. And so we really had a good spot. And what about the people that came this year? Last year. Let's talk about some of the locations. You remember locations? I remember the picture we have here. This is Orlando. Joshua's from Orlando, and then you got Terrell from San Francisco.
San Francisco, that's right.
Oakland area.
Yep.
And so there's Ian with a fellow Californian. And I don't think he's really from California, but he's been stationed in California. So these are the different states that were represented. We had a lot more than that were represented last year. And so there's myself and Joshua. And it's what it basically ends up, folks, is people are migrating. They come in and they see what's going on. They learn some of the tools, and they realize it's really not that difficult. If you're a member of the church and you're watching, you just tell yourself, look, the world is my classroom. This is just basics. You just go out and start knocking doors, and then you start engaging people. Not the first time you're knocking doors. You don't have to engage anybody. You're just inviting someone, and you're going to be doing something fabulous, and that is you'll have people saying, you know what? They might not say it to you, but they'll be talking amongst themselves. We've had Mormons and we've had Jehovah's Witnesses come to the door, but we never had the Church of Christ come to the door. Mm-hmm. And I know this is the case because we've taught people from Alabama that moved up here, lived long lives in Alabama, and they come up here and they say, we have never had the Church of Christ come to our door. And we get here into North Carolina and Virginia, and what happens is we find out about the Church of Christ. So the reason I'm saying that's phenomenal is because the largest group of individuals in the Churches of Christ are in Alabama. Mm. There's more folk in Alabama that are Christians, members of the church in Alabama, and some people might argue and say, well, Texas and Tennessee. If you are comparing Texas to Alabama, Texas is so much bigger than Alabama. And I still don't even know. I know there were 2,700 congregations in Texas, and there very easily could be a rival to that in Alabama. So just think what you'd be doing. And that actually happened, did it not? We went to individuals, or maybe you talked to somebody that was serving you in the community, and
that's right. And made mention of the fact that as far as door knockers go, they're used to just seeing Jehovah's Witnesses, or they're used to seeing Mormons, or the other name that they go by. And so and I was kind of interested actually to hear that, because most people, when I do knock on the door out here, they are not unfamiliar with the Church of Christ, and they know that we do door knock regularly out here. So to hear that from her was actually not, that was actually an anomaly. Mm. But she knows about it now.
Well, we actually have an instance where a preaching school came to our area, and they were with a congregation on the other side of town. It's actually in the county. And they went out and they were asking people, have you heard of them? And they said no. And they wanted to know, are you with Johnny Robertson and the Martinsville Church of Christ? So even the local churches of Christ, they are not known, but yet because we're in the community so much, we actually we did a search having to do with Danville City. We came up with there's 14,000 and change houses in Danville City proper. Yeah. We've knocked 14,000 houses in a year. In the past, we did, it was raining the first week, the entire week just about, and so we still did 4,000 and some change this particular time frame, right?
Yeah. And 4,600, I believe the number was. Yeah.
So basically, y'all, what we're saying is we had the opportunity to knock doors during Corona. Now, when we look back from years, like we're hindsight and we're looking back in years to come, and we will be reminded that rather than allow ourselves to be hampered by this, we actually took advantage of it, and the community was the beneficiary. Yeah. It was unbelievable how happy people were to see somebody and how much they appreciated someone actually to talk to besides the people they had been talking to. Now, we did not have as many local visitors as we normally do, but we did have a good number. I mean, I was fine with the amount of individuals. We had Baptist people that came back half the tent. One individual came half the tent every other night, and other individuals that we knocked on their doors. And
one thing interesting about knocking on doors too is some of the individuals that I ran into actually expressed that it was the first Bible conversation that they'd had gotten to have in several weeks.
Wow.
And it's because somebody actually came to visit at the door. And I'm saying a lot of people would try to discourage folks from knocking on doors to begin with. They're saying it would be a bad idea, particularly during the virus time. But it was the first time, again, in several weeks that some folks had even had an opportunity to discuss Bible with anybody.
Church closed down.
That's right, yeah.
Well, we did have one couple that came in, and Caleb asked him how they're doing, and he said, church is closed down, man. And Caleb said, I get it. And he said, no, the churches are closed down, man. And Caleb said, I do get it.
Yeah.
We did get it. And one of the things we want you to do, want everybody to realize is it was like seriously involved with our tent this year. We had visitors from, let's see if we can do this. I know we had visitors from different places in Maryland. So we had two different representations of Maryland. We had New Hampshire and Tennessee. We had Kentucky. We had Boston, different representatives from Boston. And then outside of Boston, some other individuals. So that's 5 states. North Carolina, Winston-Salem. Somebody said, well, you're in North Carolina. Well, we're talking about further out. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so that's 6 different states that were represented. And I still feel like that I'm missing 1 or 2 persons. We had Northern Virginia represented, and that's still Virginia. But, we are saying we had Virginia, and we were in North Carolina. So it's like people say, well, you shouldn't count North Carolina. Okay. We're saying cities in North Carolina that are away from us, far out North Carolina, people driving in the rain late at night, having to go back home. And this is not a time to have a breakdown.
No.
And so...
when you get out there, you're expending energy generally, unless you're just coming to sit and hear the teaching.
Yeah.
Folks that are coming out to visit too, like our visitors, they're, like Caleb said, taking time off to work, from work to work.
Yeah.
It's definitely energy expenditure.
Oh, that was very great. We had individuals that took the entire week off. You took 2 weeks off, right?
Yep.
2 weeks off of work to be at the entire tent. Tanner took off 2 weeks to be at work, from work to be at the tent, and Joey, actually our IT man that does all of the backup work on our YouTube, he took a week off, and so I'm probably missing some other individuals. These people that came from out of here, they stayed 2 weeks. We had RVs come in this year. I'm saying, folks, you really, if you missed it, you missed it. And the great thing about YouTube, let's just make a plug here. This is a kind of informational show tonight. What does the Bible say? You type in to the YouTube search line on your computer or your smartphone, just type in my name. Right up here, you type in my name. I'm probably going to be pointing the wrong way. You can see it right above my head. That's all you have to do, and we're going to come up. What does the Bible say? We'll come up. And you can start viewing. We saved the tent. It was on Facebook Live. We saved it from YouTube so that we could actually put it up in a timely fashion, give us a little bit of rest, give Caleb a little bit of rest. Let me give a plug out for Caleb. And those of you who are asking about his health, Caleb's health is not improving, and he began a new regimen. Those of you who know what an infusion is, he began a new medicine today. He passed out, had a reaction to it, and the doctor stopped it. And so I think he's seeing his doctor tomorrow, going to be talking to him. So please keep Caleb in your prayers. And he is a very, very vital part of the operation here. And so keep me in your prayers as well. I'm doing as much of the TV and the running and whatever, and we have so many contacts that it is unreal. As I mentioned just a minute ago, we had the folk from Southern Baptist telling us that they had come out of Southern Baptist watching our YouTube. We had a former Baptist preacher, 22 years in the Baptist group, a particular sort of the Lord type Baptist that is around here. He came to the tent, and it was very, very edifying, great encouragement to see an individual who has talent. He was an individual who was very highly thought of and serious in his behavior in the wrong particular group, and we're very thrilled with him. And you might say, well, why are you not talking about who that is? Well, we're giving him all the room that he can actually have in order to be able to accomplish as much as possible before other individuals come swooping down on him from his particular group and then end up trying to assassinate his character, as is the case generally. I don't understand sometimes when they say things like, well, it doesn't matter what church you're in. Well, you become a member of the Church of Christ and all of a sudden it matters. And that's fine, because that's exactly what we say. Yeah. It does matter which church you're in, and the Church of Christ is the one that matters if you actually leave yours and you happen to decide you want to obey the gospel. And so tonight, as we're going through, Ian, I'm going to go up to the top here and come down. This, I wish I had a better picture of Kathy. She, from another background. 36 years she'd been in a particular kind of Christian church. And do you really have knowledge of why I say that, right?
Yeah.
Your grandfather was a preacher, pastor in the Christian church in California.
There's some question as to whether or not he was a member of the church or the Christian church. It's uncertain, and the reason is because I cannot get my closer family member really to confirm that for sure.
Yeah.
So when I was beginning to investigate the church, you were saying a second ago, it suddenly matters when you bring up the name of the Church of Christ. All of a sudden, it does matter what church you're in. I got the side eye real quick as far as to the question was, well, what do you think about what they're teaching? Are they too hard? I just said, well, I don't know about too hard, but they're not wrong. And after that, there was...
was that your first inkling of finding out that your grandfather was possibly associated?
No, it was way after the fact.
Okay.
Way after the fact. So it was surprising to me later on looking at the situation, like why wouldn't that have been brought up as far as my grandfather's association?
Well, we are finding that individuals are not, this is what I covered this morning in the What Does the Bible Say School edition of Genesis 17, prepping us to get to Genesis 17 and catching back up because we have been off onto other fish to fry, as they say, doing the tent. And I discussed, Ian, why it is that people are not allowed in churches of Christ, preachers are not allowed to mention from the pulpit the names of the surrounding sects / denomination, sectarian partying up and creating different groups and end up having a full-blown what they call denomination, which really it is. I'm saying that denomination is a name of currency. That's a good way to understand denominationalism. I don't know how that churches actually got to be in that realm, and we got away from the Bible phrase of what they really are. And so there are just a lot of different parties or sects, and that's SCCT, and we're using that, and we're going to basically continue on that because it is a Bible term, and it is one that I think that people don't want to wear, and that may be why they got off of it.
Yeah.
But here is a lawyer from the Jews, and they have Paul up on charges, and guess what the lawyer says? We have found this man to be a pestilent fellow and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. And some individuals say, well, I don't know what a sect is. Well, if you were to look up that word in your concordance or your Bible program or even on a Google search, and you just look up the phrase sect and put Pharisee in there, it'll take you right to a scripture that you would have probably heard. You just didn't realize what was going on when you were hearing it. And what does the Bible say? We're giving you this realization that individuals, they divide up in what they call Christianity, and they divide up by names, and that's why they use the word denomination, because it has the idea of denominating by names. And so we know how that works when you go to the bank. You give them a $100 bill, and they say, hey, what denominations do you want? And it's like, well, I'll take Baptist dollars. No, you know what they're talking about. Yeah. So we're basically saying...
With money, it's convenient. With the Bible, it's unauthorized.
Okay, that's exactly right. And so we're trying to get back to what it says so that we can work this out. And so what we were talking about is this very, very interesting lady that came in by way of Florida from really Colorado, and she stayed in our home. And get this, folks, she was not a member, and she stayed with us in our home for 2 weeks, and we studied with her and talked with her. Laurie pretty much spent most of her time with her. They went around together continuously, and she helped Laurie, and so we ended up having this discussion. And I'm going to basically put this out, Ian. We were in our study actually surrounded around Revelation 3:5. And so if I'm here tonight, let's see. Let me think. And I don't have my Bible out over there. Let's try 2:5. Okay, that'll work. So, remember therefore, this will be Ephesus, remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent and do the first works, or else I will come quickly. And this is the phrase, remove thy candlestick. And so what we discussed was, to what degree does a group actually have to reach in order that they're no longer representative? Well, first of all, they have to be representative. They had to have a history. And the Christian church, y'all, if you would look up the Christian church, just do a little research, you would find that the Christian church actually split off. Officially, the government recognized it in 1906. And the reason why, and this is a good piece of information for folk out there who talk to us about airing the church's dirty laundry. The entire nation was basically able to see a division take place between members of the Church of Christ that wanted a piano and those that didn't, and also wanted other additions like a society connected to the church to do the mission work, kind of like the Southern Baptist Convention. And so the papers, the Brotherhood papers, carried this, and they all just, every one of them had it plastered on their front pages. One of the reasons was because a particular group in New Bern, Tennessee took folk to trial. And it actually was going to be a precedent-setting trial where some individuals were saying that this property belongs to us, and others say, no, this property belongs to brethren who recognize how we're supposed to praise God in an authorized way in the New Testament. And these other folk, they wanted to be like the sects around them, and they wanted to have a piano, so they ended up having a huge split, and the trial was known nationwide. So individuals, for you folk who are members of the Church of Christ and you're watching this, J.W. McGarvey actually testified on the side of the organ, the instrument, mechanical instrument. And so a lot of people don't know that. How do you find that out? The history of that is in a book called The Christian Scholar. You've actually read that book. It is an untold account of how Laurie Calhoun, who was co-founder of what ended up becoming Freed-Hardeman College. And so that information was so far and wide that the nation picked it up in a census year. And they recognized the division, and they basically placed the Christian church separate from the Church of Christ. So why did I go through that? You had to first have been a Christian in order for yourself to be in a church that is authorized, and then you can actually move so far that you have the angel saying to John to tell the church at Ephesus, one of the 7 churches in Asia, which were all the same kind, you are about to have your candlestick removed. Now, people don't realize often that Bible writers are spokesmen like the angel. They use terminology that these individuals would be used to, and that would be something to do with Jewish history. You hear a menorah?
Yep.
So so-called Jewish people today, they would still put a lot of stock in having a menorah. The candlestick that was authorized to be in the entrance into the most holy place, and it would be lit a certain way. There's certain rules associated with that, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about representation of the light, and the angel's telling John, listen, if these people don't repent, then they're no longer going to represent the actual body of Christ, the Church of Christ. And so that's what we were saying. That's what I was basically bringing out to our visitor and our sister. And it immediately sparked, very great curiosity. What does this mean? Well, she knew I was going somewhere. Yeah. And I don't really think that she was ready for that. We had already talked about the preacher. I'm in touch with the preacher, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's called me on Monday. We had a really good talk, and I'm very interested in what's going on with him. He doesn't even call himself anything associated with the Church of Christ anymore, something covenant, whatever. Mm. And so those are some of the points that I made. You don't even want to be designated by a scriptural name anymore. And so it's kind of like you did it for yourself. You actually removed your representation. We can't recognize you as a church that you read about in the Bible. And so I don't understand, why somebody would do that. I don't understand why they just keep moving.
I don't know either. I couldn't put a finger on it myself.
Well, you do recognize from being in Texas that as you tried to find a congregation that resembled what you knew you wanted to see in the New Testament, or you knew what you wanted to practice, what was your
Well,
in and around San Antonio, for instance.
the issue at that time was actually they were wearing the name,
Yeah.
but that's about where the similarities stopped with some of these congregations. Some worse than others. There was one congregation in
Now,
particular.
while you're doing this, you're actually telling people what to expect when they start trying to look for and come
Okay.
in. So basically tell some of these new converts as you're going, because that's what you were.
Okay, so I was in California when I first began. I was on the hunt. There came a time in my life where I started taking the Bible seriously. That was when I was in jail. And then after that, I started looking for the church that actually resembled what I could read about in the Bible. And then it wasn't very long before I started coming across Church of Christ material. That's what made my dad so suspicious. That's when I started getting side-eyed. So then when I came across Church of Christ material and I recognized what was being taught was what I was reading about in the Bible, I was very encouraged. And so the first thing that I did in California was I started visiting congregations. And I just have to say that after being very impressed with the material that I was seeing online in terms of doctrine and how it was supported and how all that lined up with what I was reading, when I actually visited in the flesh, I was very discouraged by what I found in California. And I recognized that just because there's good information online, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the congregations are going to match what your hopes might be from encountering that good information. So when I moved to Texas, it was the same way. There were varying degrees of activity. So there was me discovering the church that you can read about in the Bible, and then there was me actually discovering the congregations that were practicing the evangelism that you can read about in the Bible. And without the evangelism, what you basically have are people meeting on certain days, and they're having a good little quiet time in there. They hear something prepared for their ears for about 40 minutes. And after that, maybe they go get a bite to eat together.
It's a long sermon, isn't it?
Well,
Not for us, but I'm saying, man, 30 minutes is. You start looking on YouTube and.
I'm talking like sit down to get up.
Oh, okay.
So
okay. Sit down to get up.
Not necessarily
okay,
actual speaking time. And then after that, it's some kind of maybe a function. Maybe folk hang around and talk for a little bit.
Okay, now, Ian, if you're going to ask questions because you are seeing one thing online and you've been introduced to what you're seeing up here, and so when you started asking questions, did they give you side eye then too? Like, what in the world is up?
Yeah, there was. So as far as bringing up ardent, can we say contending for the faith or ardent evangelism or any kind of confrontational idea at all, there was a general discouragement. That's not what folks are interested in doing. It's not how they want to spend their time. And a lot of the congregations that I visited in Texas, and there were several, most of them, if they didn't have all sorts of, either they filled their time with all kinds of activities that the kids would be engaged in, but they're not necessarily learning anything. They're just like little project classes or little sports groups or whatever. The other congregations that were at least they seemed like it was very important for them to be teaching the truth during their speaking opportunities. They weren't involved in any evangelism, so what did you have in the pews? It was basically a smattering of elderly people. And it's like people were very surprised to see myself and Cindy walk in the door because we were several decades younger, and they were wondering, what are these folks even doing here?
Where in the world did y'all come from, and how did you find the
And
truth?
so to try to stimulate them to activity, or to try to even bring up the idea of, can we get back into the war zone here? They've been out of that for decades. And it would be like seriously turning a ship around in a strong current. They're riding out the rest of their lives, and they're not trying to get into a fight about religion.
That's unbelievable, and you just made me have a flashback. I returned home from being in a school that is literally giving me the Bible training, for the ministry, evangelism, whatever. I get back home in 1988, and I basically realized that that's exactly what's happened there. And in 88, they're just complacent. And the idea of our little preacher coming back, and they hadn't had a full-time preacher in a long time. They actually built a house in 2 years while I was gone, and pretty much paid for it as a result of another guy, an evangelistic type gentleman, staying there with them and preaching for free. So they built a house right beside the building, and now we're up with everybody else, and our little preacher's coming back. And man, I came back with the determination to get the word out. Well, hey, that's not exactly what we were planning, is everybody to actually hear that the Church of Christ is the one true church.
Yep.
And we've been here sleepily all this time and hadn't had any conflict or any trouble. And all of a sudden, you're having people be obedient to the gospel and become members of the church. And it really literally upset some of the brethren. I mean,
Yep.
One of the most prominent individuals in the congregation actually did not like, he liked 99% of my preaching. Guess what that 1% was?
What was it?
Naming names.
Ah.
Just don't name names. He said, you're insulting people that they cannot figure out that you're talking to them. And I'm like, man, you are really giving them some serious credit for being dishonest, maybe, that they do realize they're in an unauthorized situation, a religion that has never been heard of as far as the Bible is concerned. And no, they do not know their doctrine.
Yeah.
So I would preach lessons. And then we had the infamous tent meeting that they had said that we could not have. And so that's when our friend John Shannon came in with his tent. And literally the way we had that tent in is they said no when I brought it up. And he said, do they own the town? And so I said, no, find a place. And what happened is up went the tent. And some individuals said they weren't coming, and they didn't for 2 or 3 days, but God bless the women. The women
Did they show up?
they showed up. And so this was my first encounter with locally having a tent. Now, I had been to a tent in Tennessee, but I had never encountered the work and all the things associated with it. So, Ian, have you basically seen tents associated with July 4th already?
Yeah. Well, you're talking about in Danville?
Yeah.
I haven't seen them. I would be amazed if they're not out there, but I haven't been doing any traveling except to and from work. It was tent time, door knocking, and now I'm just getting back into work and like in the parks or in the office. So I haven't seen tents up selling fireworks.
Fireworks, okay. So the reason I bring that up, folks, all of these people who sell fireworks, they don't take those tents home with them. Not every one of them. Some do, some don't. And a tent, it's a good time if you see fireworks being sold under a tent and you're thinking about this kind of activity, you could actually go up and say, what are you going to do with that tent when you're done? And if they're not wanting to take it away, if it's just a seasonal thing and that's all it is, then you possibly could actually get yourself a tent and one this size. And so this is 40 by 60. You say, well, what are we going to do with the tent? What are you going to do without it? It is a phenomenal piece of equipment. It's been around since the days of the apostles. Paul was involved in tent making. Ananias, Aquila and Priscilla were involved in tent making. They were co-laborers in that kind of work. Well, why? I know that a lot of people, they're just sick of hearing about tents. But the thing is this has nostalgia connected with it. There are so many people that are not associated with the Church of Christ. They're not associated with the body of Christ at all. They went to tent meetings when they were kids. They have great memory of, they call it up here, camp meetings. Mm-hmm. And so you put up a tent and you never know. Sometimes individuals will just visit just to see what's going on up under there. And so we had at least 6 states represented. This lady came from Orlando, Florida, and stayed 2 weeks. Came out under the tent every night, and then she ended up obeying the gospel and becoming a member of the body of Christ. These individuals, as we said, came last year from far and wide, and here's some of the shots of individuals that were here from Maryland, up top right. Maryland, top, is this going to be on their TV? It's going to be the other direction. So I'll put a cursor on it. This is Maryland here. This is your mom. Right there.
Oh, yeah, it is.
So she is a transplant from California. Mm-hmm. We hope it sticks. This man right here we're seeing in the back is from Kentucky. And this is Boston right here. Actually, New Hampshire. This is the man in front right here. This is himself and his daughter. And they came in from Kentucky. I don't really know. He's from Tennessee, actually, but he's in Kentucky at this point. Now, this is the lady that was baptized that we were seeing earlier. I did have a good picture of her, and you can see her there seated with Laurie. This is my daughter, Che, right here beside her. And this is our IT man's wife, Michelle. And all of these individuals were working tirelessly, feeding individuals at lunch, going out and knocking doors. And we really, when people went back to work in, they were like, man, we have just changed our entire life as far as what we do, the things that we're involved in, and we don't miss what we were doing before, which is our regular life.
Yeah.
And it's like plugging back in. You went to work the first time today, right?
Yeah.
In how many weeks?
In 2 weeks or 2.5 about, and it was a whole switch of life rhythm. I felt like the day ended too quickly, and when I say too quickly, I just mean like it was 4:15, and with the amount of work that we were getting done during the tent, I thought to myself, I can't possibly have gotten enough work today to have earned my money if I'm getting off at 4:15. But then on the other hand, 15-hour day under the tent. So I'll just go ahead and say, so with Parks and Rec, a big part of the idea with the city is that we are trying to improve the community atmosphere. We're trying to give something of value to the community, and I understand that parks are fantastic for creating opportunities for folks to be outside in a healthy environment, but that just doesn't hold a candle to trying to bring true religion into the community and getting everybody on the same page. The time that we spent during that 2 weeks at the tent was far more fulfilling and more valuable than anybody's going to get out of a 9-to-5 secular job. And so that was part of it too, getting acclimated back to work, is I realized I do care about my job, but it just doesn't hold a candle to what we were giving the community at the tent.
So you mentioned 14 hours, and I have not computed what workers were doing that were working alongside of us. So basically, you're coming in around 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're traveling 40 minutes from Martinsville. 40. So you basically, some people don't count time when you're working for the Lord. They don't count time driving. I don't know why. The government counts time for you driving if you're actually working. You can take your mileage. So you're driving 40 minutes there. You get there around 9, and you leave, at 9 at night?
That's if, there's nothing going on as far as maybe getting into a conversation with an individual who wants to know more about obeying the gospel, or you're getting into a conversation with a brother or sister that's visiting with you that heard something they hadn't heard before, and now there's a discussion about it. You don't just turn off just because, the show's over.
Yeah. And you're in the takedown and put up, along with Tanner, as far as all the audio and the equipment and things of that nature. Folks, you just, you cannot imagine. I know you see this, and you see this tent picture right here. That's going to be coming up in our playlist. Well, that was actually the first night we did put it up. And so when you see that, it's just like, that is, people just don't have a realization of exactly what that takes. But Ian just mentioned that it's like 14 hours in the making. And then Caleb and I, we have those lessons that we're doing, and then the prep time associated with them, not to mention that we had 3 RVs set up at the building in Danville, and they were, basically feeding off of our electricity and water and whatnot. And then that's my office space during the tent, and so it was really hectic, very enjoyable, getting to know. You got people from Tennessee parked in a RV right beside people from New Hampshire, and the man from New Hampshire works in Boston. And then our RV is over to the side, and it is a lot of action, and that's something we've never done before. Actually welcome the RVers in.
Yep.
One of the RVs had 6 people in it. So that, from New Hampshire, that was really phenomenal to watch them be able to function.
Yep.
Man, can you imagine?
And a couple turtles.
And some 3 dogs.
And 3 dogs.
So it was, I basically barely saw the dogs, a couple of times. And so it just it is something that you cannot really describe when you experience a gentleman from Tennessee that came to us via Kentucky. He's just basically saying there is no way, a little bit blurry, there's no way that a person can actually tell this. You have to experience it. And so we have people that come back yearly. We're definitely wanting people to watch our YouTube, and we're excited about the opportunity to work more with Ian. And just so you know, Ian is working very much in the ministry with us. We're constantly seeing him and involved with him. He lives right next door to Caleb, and worships in Danville. And are you teaching on a regular basis now, Ian?
Yeah, we're doing a rotation for Bible study. So every other week I do a lesson down there.
So are you on Facebook Live? Is that how that goes up, or is it by invitation, or what?
It is by invitation.
Yeah.
Right now. So that's how that goes up. I don't know if there might be some that at some point we decide to make more public, just depending on what the need is. If we need to, fill some time, or if there's a particular lesson that we think might be good for a particular person, we might send it to them. But generally what we're doing is when we're doing the Bible study, as you know, that Bible study time in general is for us. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be addressing things and getting into things in a way that, especially if we're doing a series, it's going to be more intelligible for people that have been there day by day and are involved with the current issues and are seeing how these scriptures would apply directly or how they relate to other lessons. So might be a little more difficult if we just made it public and folks were just clicking on it rather than like an hour that is geared toward folks that are not members of the church. So
during Corona, since you've been at Danville, have y'all had people that are visiting?
Yeah.
Their churches are closed.
Yeah, church is closed. We had one man in particular who was coming very frequently. He brought a friend of his who came once, and then he didn't come back. But we've been seeing our new friend ever since visiting in Danville. He was coming regularly, and then we saw him at the tent. And it's my understanding that his building has already opened back up where his church meets, but that didn't keep him away from the tent.
So my understanding is that his building opened up with a gymnasium area so that because it's so large, they could social distance, and he's not happy with that either. And so, being a Baptist on top of that, in a situation that's totally unauthorized, and he is learning that his doctrine doesn't line up with the New Testament. Folks, I don't understand really for the life of me how it is that individuals think that things can be done in a way that we can sustain ourselves, churches of Christ, I'm talking about churches of Christ, when you have clear commands that this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be going into all the world and preaching the gospel to every creature. Now, the gospel, certainly, you just cannot get around the fact that the gospel is going to contain one particular element that seems to be people are trying their very best to get away from, and that is the fact that Jesus is the establisher, the author of the church. Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Corona has prevailed against it in many locations as far as local areas. That's not what's supposed to happen. And number two, we're not supposed to hide this message. This is an extremely simple process of just telling people. And I think, Ian, that they think it is so complicated to come up with something to say at the door.
Oh, yeah.
It's something as simple as, I'm with the church that you read about in the Bible.
Yeah.
What in the world, whether they say it or not.
Yep.
Some people might just not want to appear not to be in the know, but they're wondering, what in the world does that mean? And you just go from there.
Yeah. When I first came out to visit, the first tent that I was ever at, I went with Caleb out into a community, and I remember saying to him, "Can I just watch y'all for a little bit?" And he said, "Well, Ian, if you can handle it, we'd just rather you just get in there.
Strike out.
Yeah, get in there, say whatever you got to say at the door." And it becomes, as you were saying earlier, Johnny was alluding to, the idea that you just go ahead and knock on the door, and it can just be a simple invitation at first. And after a while, if you're an individual that is full of nerves, then you can start with that, something simple, not necessarily confrontational. Most people will be polite enough to hear you get something out, like, "Will you visit with us on Sunday?" And then from there, as you get more comfortable, you can start introducing things. Like you said, how many churches did Jesus start? I'm saying you only started one. I believe I'm in it.
Yeah.
Let's have a Bible study. John, one I've been using a lot, I used it a lot during this tent, is a combination of verses. John chapter 8, verse 31 and 32, where he says, if you abide in my word, you'll be my disciple, and know the truth will make you free. And then in John chapter 17, starting about 17 and following, where he's praying to the Father that we would all be one, he indicates that that's going to happen through the word that is preached about him. Mm-hmm. And we know that God and the Father didn't disagree on doctrine. He wants us to be one as he and the Father are one. So I'll try to present just those two verses, very easy. If you abide in my word, you'll know the truth will make you free. Jesus' desire was that we would all be one. He said it would be through the word that would occur. And then if you express to the individual at the door 2 little verses back to back, and you say, do you think if you and I dug a little bit, we'd find out that we believe differently in religion? If they say yes to that question, then you say, is it Jesus' will more that we have a Bible study about those things, or that we just say, yeah, we got differences? And that puts it on them. And if nothing else, you walk away from that door and they know, well, I had an opportunity for Bible study. I know that Jesus would like me to be unified with other people that believe on him, that we all believe the same, and I said no. And it's like, hopefully they say yes.
You know what I learned, and I don't think we have a picture of Howard. Do you have one, Tanner? Since we are hooked up to internet, I can take a private message if you see him. I learned something from Howard. You know, we've been mulling it around about what to say instead of Bible study, because I'm wondering what they think. And because I was in the folks, if y'all are watching, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where Fort Bragg is, I am trying to get back to y'all. We just have been swamped with calls and, you know, folk that are just now being introduced. But I was there in, 2 weeks before the 10th, something like that. We went over to Fayetteville, and I talked to somebody that was watching the program, and he was introducing his family, you know, to us, and we were there actually to immerse him. And I said to them, well, why don't I come back and we'll have Bible study? And it was like, what? You know, I'm saying I'm just saying this. If this is not the case, that's fine. It just appeared to me that by the facial expression, it was like, what in the world is he talking about? You know, what are we fixing to start here? And so I've been wondering this a long time, because I asked some people one time in Greenville, Texas. I asked some people around the church building, in neighboring religious groups. I said, what do you think when we put up a sign that says gospel meeting? They said, well, we think y'all are having some kind of in-house type of thing. We don't know that phrase. We don't use that phrase. And so, you know, they use revival and campaign and different things like that. And so I'm thinking about Bible study, and Howard basically tells me Howard was running 3 Bible studies a week, I think, and might have been 4. So he came in from Tennessee, he and his wife, Kathy, and he's telling me that he's finding that people don't want you in their house because a lot of cases both people work. So if the wife is working and so the husband is working, and who's keeping house? Well, who's worried about keeping house if both, you know, male and female are working? Both spouses are working. And so, I mean, what a lot of people say when you find out somebody's coming over. Oh, man,
Yep.
You invited them over. What in the world are you thinking about? Well, what are they thinking about? They're worried about the way their house looks.
Yep.
So basically what Howard has done is he started having, he calls it an old-time neighborhood Bible study at his house. And he invites individuals to come into his house, and a lot of times they will come continuously to his house. And so, you know, they just have to, if Kathy's not in good health, if she's not wanting to do whatever, then they just get used to their house, however it is. And hey, if that is what it is, then we just found out a tremendous clue from folk that visit, trying to help us, you know, with the evangelistic work that we're doing, shared some tools. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think that the reason that he would have something to be able to offer us is because he's out there practicing. And it would be fantastic if we had more brethren that were out there that were doing just that, so that they could offer assistance to folks that are just trying to get into it.
We have a lot of people who offer us coaching, but they are not in it.
Right.
Here's an individual that's in it big time, and he's one of the persons that came with an RV. And so it was amazing, really, that our clock is actually 10 minutes slow, by the way, on my computer, in case you're looking at that. So I'm always on time. So I'm saying it's actually fast, isn't it? Yeah, it's actually fast.
Yeah.
I'm always on time as a result of watching this computer. But this individual came in, and that was a tremendous piece of information to share with us, and I can't wait to start using it. And we have places that we can invite people, like the apartment area where you live and where Caleb lives. We have an empty apartment. We could start saying, you know, you can come over to our apartment. And if it's a woman, you could say that we'll always have another woman there, and we can sit down and we can talk about our differences. And so I'm really, you know, I've been trying to figure out something that would change the environment. And once, you know, I kind of thought, we discuss this all the time. You know, people saying that there's possibility that they might talk with us. But the thing is, something ends up happening, and we're trying to think about, what is it that we're doing? And I mean, really, Ian, that is so simple.
Yeah.
That and it's so should have been one of the first thoughts. How would you like for somebody just to up and come over? Not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And we got to have some prep time, but you can up and come over, and
Be the honored guest.
yeah. And so we get an opportunity to do that. So if you're listening and you're a member of the church, basically just have the idea of clearing a space at your house, and you have nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose.
And as you're saying that, it's like it just highlights how much it is a lifestyle. Now you're talking about making sure that you're maintaining your domicile in such a fashion as you can have, let's say you ask somebody at the door, would you like to come over and have a Bible study? And they say, I can be there tonight. You see what I'm saying? We don't want to just have to rush and catch up now. Yeah. It's like we want to make sure that we're protecting our time, we're organizing our affairs so that we're not chasing so hard after things in our secular lives that we're not devoting enough time to being available for the kind of work we're saying we'd like to be available for. Now we have to keep our houses in a certain condition to make sure that we're always able to have visitors if they should want to come over. And I feel like I'm very glad that I could come out here some years ago now and start to be associated with folks that are doing that on a day-to-day basis, because it helps to be able to see in real time, in modern times, what it is that you see in the Bible people doing, organizing their whole lives around it, rather than it being like a slice of the pie. It's like at the center of life, and it reaches into every other aspect.
So you've been in plenty of homes, you and Caleb together. What is it like when you go into somebody's home that actually is willing to invite you in?
It's a surprise, actually.
Yeah.
When somebody invites you in and they're welcoming and they seem to be relaxed to have you in their home. I hear stories about decades gone by that used to be a more common thing, and I'm thinking it's just becoming more and more rare the more screens people have plugged in front of them and telecommunications and all that. It's like folks just don't visit each other that way anymore, but there are some people out there that just genuinely enjoy it. And I think, since we're talking about it, folks just aren't used to having company over and they don't keep their house in a constant state of readiness. As we're talking about it, it makes more and more sense that it would be impressive to folks if you're just saying you can come over.
Yeah. Well, now that we're sitting here thinking about it too, the reason I asked you that question, I've been in thousands of homes, the 20 years that I've been here, thousands of homes. There's just no way to measure the amount of Bible studies that we've been in. And Ian, I can so remember going into the house at first, and I've got tools. We're going to go in and they are going to see visuals. That's just an absolute. So I go in my computer and you got to have a plug. And it's like, so, I'm this intruder that comes in and I'm as nervous as they are because, I can't do the niceties, the greetings and all that, because I got to get to, I got to have a plug.
Yep.
And not only that, if you have a television that is accessible, I will plug an HDMI cord into it or whatever, and we'll try to get this up on the big screen, because people's got these big old screens. Why not use them?
Yep.
And I have done that so many times in the, this last decade as this came along, and it's just, I'm telling you, the difference between them coming to our house or our apartment is, I just cannot wait to start using that tool. And so, all people would have to do, really, our brethren in Martinsville, literally, we could fix it up where you had the key, and they basically give you a call, and you go upstairs and unlock the door, or another one of the apartments or whatever, and it would be a very, very nice setting. And just, I don't know if Howard's watching. I know he does watch regularly over in Crossville, and that was a very great tool that you introduced to us, piece of information. And so Ian is. If I can ask this, is your mom transplanting all right? We're talking for other people who we've had some people move in. We've had a lot of people talk about moving.
Yeah.
And so how is she transitioning from L.A., Redondo Beach, to sleepy Martinsville?
So
rural life.
She, especially during the first year, I can say maybe the first couple of years that she was here, very less frequently during the second year, mostly during the first year. The availability of certain favorite stores that she would frequent in California, certain favorite types of food that were readily available in the dense LA County area that aren't as available out here, those were the things that stuck out, I think, most. And longer drives between places. But now that it's been a little bit of time, it's like she reminisces about California because she has family back there and she spent a large portion of her life back there. But she's acclimated very well to the area here. Her and I are We are maintaining excellent communication as far as making sure that we're backing each other's play out here, living arrangements and all that. So she did mention about tent time that it was an excellent way of bonding with the brethren. She feels much closer to several of them after having been through the tent, being there every single day. I think it's something
Did she get the first week off?
She got I don't think she got both weeks off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So she got 2 weeks off. She was there every day.
She works for the hospital, and so go ahead with that.
I was saying she was there every day, and the way that she was talking about what she got out of it in terms of fellowship with everybody else that was there, I realized as she was saying that probably a lot of folks that haven't tried something like that, a tent meeting or like a 2-week intense evangelistic effort where everybody is involved and everybody's committed, everybody's showing up and putting in that kind of work together. I think that it's folks probably underestimate what a relationship building exercise that is just amongst brethren, how it really bonds us over the work and gets us like-minded.
Really, Ian, they do have this in their lives when they go take their kids to camp. But the level of an intensity and the teaching is so different. Where a camp is geared towards kids, this is geared towards the world. And that's the thing that they can identify. They make friendships, and kids make friendships, and the parents often make friendships through the kids that last for a lifetime. Well, in this, you're actually doing kingdom work, and you're reaching out, and so it is an excellent opportunity to build relationships. And those people that came to the tent from different places, like Howard, he met how many different people from different states that share this same relationship or this kindred spirit. So let's see here. This is Howard, and we actually have folks from New Hampshire there. This one from New Hampshire, and that was a great day. We're actually having a hermeneutics class that was going to be running on our YouTube as well. Every day at 2, we had hermeneutics, and Caleb taught some of those, and I taught some of those. I think we split it in half, and that's what we're doing there. Is we probably have just dismissed. This is the front entrance to the Danville building, and all of it was just absolutely impeccable as far as intent, attendance, interest. Just, people were actually wanting us to do more hours than we were doing, more hermeneutics. And it's just, it was a brainchild that Caleb came up with to have daytime classes. John Shannon does this a lot in his tent meetings because it's wasted time.
Yep. And
especially where in the ones he goes to where they don't knock doors, then you've just got all day long. And for the man who's the evangelist, that's excruciating to do nothing. Be in a hotel and go out and eat, come back and go out and eat. Somebody wants to eat supper, somebody wants to eat lunch. And instead, we're actually giving people the tools to help other people. Somebody says, I don't know hermeneutics. Yes, you do. It's simply the science of expounding or interpreting, finding the true Bible meaning. And so, more pictures? Or is that somebody else? Melissa came from Boston, so there is another individual that was here from the Metroplex there. And we had another guy that actually was homeless.
That's right.
That came in a way that created a bit of a struggle. That's what people thought, but we're used to that kind of thing. And so he ended up staying after they had gone, and he rode a bus from Roanoke back to Boston. So we solved all of those kinds of prickly issues where a person doesn't belong in the hotel room with somebody else. And upon finding that out, we quickly countered, pivoted, and set things in order so that no rumors or unbecoming behavior was even suggested. And the only event that lingers in my mind, Ian, is the individual that came that wanted to help us out with the cooking.
That's
and
right.
So we just could not get it to register with him that have to be very careful that we don't do something that violates the state law or regulation of the health department. And he just wouldn't take no for an answer. So we had to say, you know what, if you're going to cause trouble, then it's, you just have to do something else.
And I'm sure folks can understand when, as they're hearing us,
Go ahead.
as they're hearing us describe all the different things that we're trying to pay attention to, things that we're trying to cover, personalities that we're engaged with, and problems that we're addressing on the fly. I'm sure folks understand the need to be able to control the work and be able to just exclude certain things if there are going to be complicating factors. So
You were the individual that was actually the filter, kept everybody, and if they got mad at you first,
Yeah.
and then they saw me. Thanks for watching tonight. This is What Does the Bible Say? And I appreciate Ian for all the work that he does and the help and encouragement he is to the work. Always ask for what does the Bible say? God bless you. Good night.